The Shadow Walker, Elias and Bodach, written by Jazzy Zodiac. Author's note: I'm sorry, sis. I couldn't protect you. The ocean crashed against the rugged cliffs, a stark contrast to the tranquil fields of emerald green. Upon the Irish hills, there's a cottage standing there, embraced by wildflowers and wrapped in the morning mist. Inside this cottage, a young man is sitting quietly on the cold brick bond floor, his eyes locked onto the shadowy corner of the room. His wary gaze drifts downward, tracing the bare, outdated walls that lack any wallpaper. Outside, the distant sounds of children's laughter and screams floated in through the window, joyful echoes in this small, dim room where he remained in. One can feel the chilling breeze that brushes against the skin as the remnants of the recent rain are whisked away. Above the hills, the sunlight would break through the clouds, gilding the sky and casting a radiant glow upon a cluster of birch trees, the leaves, stripped of their summer vibrancy, shimmering in striking beautiful yellows and golds, yet quivering and twisting in the wind, a slow, rustling surrender to the approaching and welcoming winter upon the land. His look was quite ordinary. Those who saw him once mostly would have forgotten about him day after. He often lingered in the park while others engaged in conversation, or he would retreat into his room quietly. His straight, dark brown hair fell in bangs, hiding his amber haze eyes. The remainder of his hair was cut to a short to medium length. Every once in a while, he would fidget, attempting to maintain an appearance of tranquility. At the same time, he noticed his father angrily shouting at his mother. "I've had it. He's completely lost his sanity, Maggie. He simply cannot stay here," he argued. "I swear to God, Frederick, you're no better than him. Besides, where else could he possibly go?" she insisted. "He needs time, Fred. He can't just be thrown out just because he can't afford rent now," his father snapped. "And yet he still hasn't landed a job. At his age, he's 24, so almost 30. He needs time," he said sarcastically. "That's not a damn excuse. He needs to get off his ass. He hardly even coughs up rent. That parasitic waste of time will be out by next month, or I'll drag his sorry ass into the street myself. I'm not gonna let him use me like his own fucking personal bank." The young man was overwhelmed with emotions. He couldn't help but let his eyes begin to tear up at his father's statement. How could he be so ready to abandon him in such a difficult moment? After the argument, his father stormed out of the room, violently pushing his mother aside, as she let out a pained grunt when her back got hit against the kitchen counter. When she heard her husband storming towards their son's room, she immediately stood up and started following him. "Stop it, Fred!" she screamed, her voice laced with desperation as she reached out to seize her husband's arm, attempting to prevent him from advancing towards their son, who sat there lightly trembling in the corner, with his eyes fixated on the door, staring at it. The blood dripped down on the floor from the edge of the bed after a while when he used to cut himself with his dagger that was lying on the floor next to him to escape reality. As his father stormed inside the room, he grabbed Elias by the collar of his dark grayish purple-bagged hoodie. The hood was draping over his shoulders. Towering above him, his father glared at him firmly. "Do you really think this is a fucking game?" he growled, his voice dripping with menace. "If you don't secure a damn job before you hit 25, you're gone. I'll make sure you won't ever step foot in this place again." He spoke coldly. Elias's mother stood frozen in the shadows, her breath hitching, eyes widening in terror as the nightmare unfolded before her. As soon as his father stormed out, slamming the door shut and locking it behind him. "You're not getting out until you've found something productive to do," his father yelled. Once he stormed out, Elias exhaled a trembling sigh. The whole scenario started when he was only 16. He felt anger towards his father, yet he couldn't do nothing about it. As the day went by, the sun dripped below the horizon. He chose to go on a small walk to handle a matter face to face. He opened up his window and climbed down from there in secret, while no one else saw him doing so. Once he got outside, he started strolling towards the neighbor's house, covering his face with a mouthguard mask. As he neared the house that was standing 10 kilometers away from his house, he realized the door stood ajar. He slipped inside, careful to remain silent, and made his way down the corridor, heading towards the woman's room. He opened the door with an utmost caution, ensuring it was closed without a sound. As he hovered behind her, a bloody knife gripped tightly in his hand, the one that he used to slit his arms open. He moved closer, noticing her engrossed in old photographs of her siblings, or perhaps childhood friends? Who could tell? He crouched down, casting a slow glance at the image. In the photograph, 2 girls were frolicking across the grass. One girl wore a white floral dress adorned with vibrant roses. Her pantyhose were a pristine white. Her champagne blonde hair fell straight, framed by curtain bangs. Her pale skin shimmered in the sunlight as she dashed alongside with her friend, laughing. The other girl wore a pink jacket, yet that was all he could recall before hitting back into darkness. Wrapped by the electronic sound that echoed in his ears, his sight faded into a haze of emptiness. The next day he found himself awake in an unfamiliar place. It appeared to resemble a storage space, cluttered with numerous boxes scattered across the floor and various counters. He quietly examined his surroundings, absorbing the visuals of the place he had been teleported into. As he strolled through the room, his eyes wandered. During his exploration, he spotted an ancient computer that looked like it was from the year 1990, which is where he found himself. The year was 1990, or at least that's what he thought. He was slightly taken aback by the sight of the PC. He had just been born this year, so how the hell did he arrive here from the future? It was all too confusing for him to grasp. This must be some kind of trick. That's it. A damn hocus-pocus situation. There couldn't be any other explanations for this. While thinking about it a while, he could swear he kept hearing wailing voices in his head that were echoing in him to do something that's out of reach. After a while, the group of guys were letting out obnoxious, toxic shouts as they were muffled by the door, insults, laughter, and accusations hurled at one another, trapped mere feet away from him. Goosebumps crawled across his skin. He needed to escape, but he had no idea how. As the door swung open, the light heat from the hallway faded inside the cold room. The group of boys, led by the leader, who wore a slow, sinister grin that spread across his face. His right arm was draped around his friend's neck as he stormed into the storage. A sudden chill coursed through Elias's skin as he nervously glanced at the leader's face, who was standing there sweating. He understood that escaping the situation was impossible. For now, he must prepare for the impending fight that was affecting his current predicament. The leader looked over at him, a smirk wavering slightly before he offered a mocking grin. "Well, well, well, look who we have here, boys." A trace of sarcasm laced in his tone. His eyes narrowed, searching for Elias's face for any sign of fear. Every step the leader made resonated with purpose, narrowing the gap like a predator relishing the impending moment. He moved closer to his next target, hinting that same grin on his lips. Elias stumbled back, his breath catching, as the guy walked towards him with progressed steps, each step more oppressive than the last, like a storm about to explode. Without a second thought, Elias suddenly pushed him, sending the guy crashing backwards, his palm smashing into the guy's chest with a power that felt foreign to him. A sharp grunt escaped his lips, and for a fleeting moment the room was filled with silence. His lips twisted into a sinister grin. "You'll regret that, freak," he growled. And just then, Elias realized how stupid he was. As he tried to flee, the leader seized him by the hair, yanking him back to where he had been, regardless of Elias's desperate screams for help and his futile attempts to fight back. It was pointless. The bullies towered over him as the leader dragged him back. He slammed Elias's face into the wall with brutal force, a pained grunt escaping his lips. A thin trickle of blood fell down his temple, staining his hoodie and pooling at his collar. His vision blurred once more as everything felt so real. This had to be some damn fucking nightmare, he thought. His sight faded and glitched once more as he collapsed onto the floor, his face dragging against the wall, inching downwards, before hitting the ground with a resounding thud from the weight of his baggy clothes. As his sight faded into a complete haze, he became aware of a gathering of figures draped in dark cloaks, hoods shrouding their faces. They meticulously scattered salt in a flawless circle around him, then, one by one, positioned 5 taper candles, black and red, at each vertex of the star. As they carved dream symbols into his skin with golden and silver daggers, he began to hear chantings in a long-forgotten tongue. The symbols seemed to blend into his skin, a gentle burn spreading through him. Too feeble to resist, he just lies there, devoid of any will. He seems completely wretched. As the blood was gathered in the bowl and blended with the dark ink, one of the members drew near, reciting an incantation while gripping his skin, tilting it upward and allowing the ink to flow into his eyes. A piercing pain clawed at Elias's vision. Tears began to stream down his face as he experienced the burning sensation in his eyes. He let out a yelp of pain, akin to a stifled scream, because the leader muffled his screams with his gloved hand. As the ink blinded his sight, the initial shock yielding to an enduring, excruciating torment. The next morning he jolted awake, quickly sitting up in bed, soaked in perspiration. He gasped anxiously, his voice scarcely a whisper as a wave of relief enveloped him. Perched on the edge of his bed, the remnants of the chanting still resonated in his ears like a shattered spell wanting to be unleashed. As the weeks went by and his mind started giving him trouble, his thoughts bounced around like crazy, just like his moods always did. He kept doing and saying the same things, but his dad always answered the same way. It never changed, never surprised him either way. That left him with this nagging feeling that something was off. Honestly, it was the same kind of discomfort he'd felt ever since the abuse started, but now it hit harder. Way harder. He could remember every single situation of his childhood as they were detailed, but he still couldn't shake off the doubts about who his father really was. No matter how he looked at it, nothing made sense or matched what he wanted it to be. One day he just went for it and asked his father a bold question, even though he felt nervous about it. He waited until they were sitting at the lunch table. Both parents stopped picking up their food in confusion. Maggie looked at her son worriedly and said, "What do you mean, son? That's your father." Elias bit his lower lip with his upper teeth, avoiding his gaze from his parents. He exhaled deeply, overwhelmed by the swirling thoughts in his head. With a low, exasperated sigh, he raked his hand through his hair. He paused for a few moments, contemplating his words. Finally, he parted his lips, a click of his tongue preceding his words. "I just wanted to say, actually, never mind, forget it. It's not worth it anyway." He sighed again, rising from his seat, his meal left uneaten. "Hold on a second, son. You haven't even touched your food," his father called out, shooting him a sharp look as Elias started to leave the table. Elias stopped, kind of unsure, and glanced at his dad. Then he looked down at his plate, like it was some weird thing sitting in front of him. "I'm not hungry," he said, voice flat, eyeing the food like it had personally offended him. His mother looked worried as he got up and headed for the door. "You're not hungry. Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. Elias exchanged a slow look with his mother before turning back to the door. "I'm not just hungry. You both can eat," he stated as he positioned his hand to grip the handle and unlatch the door. As he was ready to storm out the door, his father halted him by resting a hand on his shoulder. "Wait a moment. You're not leaving until you've had something to eat." Elias quickly spun around to confront his father's stare as he forcefully pushed his arm away. "Don't touch me!" he yelled with defiance. His anxiety barely held in check. It was very clear he wanted out. He didn't want anything to do with him anymore. Sometimes his episodes twisted everything, made him second-guess what he saw, or wondered if someone or something was pulling the strings behind his back like a puppet. He couldn't shake off these heavy, unsettling thoughts, like maybe his father was just a mask, not the person everyone else thought he was. He felt like he was a puppet to him, sometimes even having dreams where he had the key attached onto his back of the neck like an old wind-up doll. He was drowning in a sea of unending stress and the suffocating burden of fate, just itching to break free from that house at long last. But nope, he was stuck. All thanks to his parents shooting him glares packed with disappointment and rage. His father's brutal response hung over him like a death sentence. "Oh, you're not hungry, huh? Care to explain why? Is there something in the food that's got you all so worried?" his father asked, staring him down. It's merely... "I'm not famished, all right?" Elias struck out at him hoarsely. "You haven't even had anything to eat all day, though." His mother shot him with glances filled with daggers, her concern palpable. "I just have so many thoughts going on in my head. I could really use some fresh air," he stated carefully. "I guess I'll return in about an hour." And just like that, he suddenly started to stroll outside. His parents gazed at one another until his mother remarked, "I think it's time to schedule a doctor's appointment." Frederick rolled his eyes and replied, "Well, of course. Perhaps they will gain insight into what's going on in his head." Later on, Elias walked towards the park, stopping to gaze at the sandy path, contemplating matters more deeply. He couldn't shake that dream off from his mind, no matter how hard he tried. All morning it nagged at him, hovering at the edges of his thoughts. Maybe it was nothing, just his brain making things up, but it felt so vivid, like he could feel it physically, whatever happens in there. The voices, those unfamiliar faces, the chanting, they still echoed in his head, making his skin crawl. He couldn't help but wonder, what if it wasn't just his mind playing tricks on him? What if it was real? The thought unsettled him, and he couldn't stop turning it over in his mind. It weighed on him more than he cared to admit. Is there a possibility to uncover the truth about these people? After thinking about this for some time, he hurried to the library. When he arrived at the checkout, he inquired whether they had a book on that particular group, and the librarian responded that they might have something related to them. The librarian tapped away at the keyboard, composing something for their website. Nothing concrete was found until one file was found. Bodach. The librarian informed that the creature he was searching for was known as Bodach. As he listened to her some time, he soon realized that it was already nearly 2:30 p.m., and he had to complete various other tasks before his father would once again nag him about the matter. He expressed his gratitude to the librarian immediately after noting down the name for his inquiries and then rushed out of the library. Half an hour later, he arrived at his home yard, noticing his father's angry expression. When his father glared at him with arms crossed, standing on a terrace, "You're late," he barked. "I know, I'm sorry." He snapped back at his father with a sarcastic comment, eyes glaring with defiance. Then he stomped up the stairs to the balcony, walked inside the house, and left his father just standing there furious. His mom just stood there frozen, trying to process what she had just seen. She had seen the whole thing. The dad just stared after his son, arms falling to his sides, looking absolutely stunned. "That son of a..." he began, but the mother interrupted the discussion. Hey, that's quite enough. We certainly don't need any additional drama here, do we?" Her husband let out a heavy sigh. "I suppose not. Just fetch me a beer." The mother gazed at him before rolling her eyes at him as she sighed dramatically. "You have your own legs, you know. You can stroll into the kitchen all on your own." She shot back. The father glared at her with irritation before marching off to the kitchen. He approached the fridge, pulling it open, and tagged out a bottle of spiritus, the transparent liquid glimmering in the faint glow of the kitchen light. The label cautioned about its remarkable potency, yet he hardly paid any mind to it. In another room, Elias was seated at his computer, typing out the explanation of Bodach that the librarian had previously discussed with him. His bedroom was somewhat disorganized. The oversized single-platform wooden bed was positioned diagonally in the corner of the room, adjacent to the 8:1 plaza window. Vintage posters on the wall in chaotic orderliness above the bed, while the TV sat on a small, broad, low dresser crafted from dark-stained timber. Its drawers marked with scuffs and scratches, handles polished to a sheen from years of handling. It wasn't intended for garments, but rather for the remnants of daily existence. VHS tapes, haphazardly placed magazines, and the remotes of devices long since abandoned. The curtains material seemed to have been torn apart and worn down by the passage of time and disregard. The borders are tattered and dangle in wisps, resulting in a fragile yet disquieting look. The gauzy fabric is not a pure white, but rather a grimy brownish gray, having been marked by years of deterioration. Some may even bear coffee stains to enhance this aged appearance. The thin, translucent cloth casts fuzzy, warped shadows, creating an impression of motion. The drapes droop listlessly to the window frame. Garments lay strewn across the floor, mingling with the ancient tomes he once perused. He was reading the text on his computer, but his father barged in before he could even finish the article. "What are you reading, boy?" he inquired, glancing at the screen. Elias suddenly hid the website, as he got startled by his father's sudden arrival. He gulped and replied with a shaky voice, "Well, it's just a school project," and his father shot him a look that could melt steel. "A school project? Please, you're kidding me. You hardly even step foot in that place anymore. Now let me see the project," he insisted while rolling his eyes. Elias stepped back from the computer screen, revealing what he was looking at, as his father eyeballed the article on the screen. "Bodach, what the hell?" His father shot a furious glare at the screen, filled with disapproval. Look, Dad, I can explain," Elias stuttered, anxious about how his father would react to this. His dad seized him by the collar, glaring down at him as if judging his whole existence. "Explain?" he snarled. "There's nothing to explain about. What the hell were you searching for? That's just a damn myth, for crying out loud. You better erase that shit right now. And if I find you trying to dig up that nonsense again, I swear to God I'll send you straight to the damn mental hospital. Did I make myself clear?" he urged roughly and plumly, as if he wanted his words to reach their destination into his mind. His father's piercing steel blue eyes shot a bitter glance at his son. "I swear to God, you're just as bad as..." As his father continued to ramble on about something, he unexpectedly drifted off, his gaze shifting to the hallway, tuning out the words that his father was blurting out. even though he struggled to keep up with whatever his father was going on about. The sudden warp sounds around him led to a faint whisper of his name echoing in his ears several times. His brain would struggle to interpret the rapid, threatening signals. He noticed behind his father a cracked wall, where an eyeball would glance over at him, with that cold, distant, eerie look, as the long, contorted fingers looming slowly from the wall's cracks, slithering through the crevices in the surface as if trying to reveal themselves out to him through that cracked wall. He glanced at the crack in horror as the shiver ran through his veins in cold blood, giving him the goosebumps all over his skin, until his dad boomed out of anger. "Elias, are you listening to me or not?" Elias jumped back as his shoulders shuddered, anxiously giving off that tense look, scanning the area. No cracks, no limbs and hands whatsoever were found, as if every hallucination was gone just like that. He slowly looked up at his father, who gave him a look of disbelief. The mother gave her son a pitiful look as she pried him nervously. Are you okay, son?" "Yeah, I'm dandy," he replied, letting out a jittery laugh out of nervousness. Why asking?" he questioned, trying to sound less shaky. His father looked at him with doubt before he beamed his gaze up at his mother, who stared at him in confusion. "Are you sure? You were kind of dozing off," his mother examined, trying to get through his head what was bothering him. Her long, luminous, ash-brown, russet, curly hair was adorned with a half-up ponytail featuring a delicate braid atop, flowing into gentle, cascading curls, and her forehead was covered up with curtain bangs. The lower section of her hair is left down, styled in defined, voluminous ringlets that were laying down on her shoulder, against her fair, rosy, pale skin, to her chest and waist. Her dark gray eyes were twinkling with the same eerie, serene mannerism like they used to be. Elias met his mother's eyes in silence before looking up at his father. Both of them were wearing very fancy clothes for a gala or some other shit like that. He couldn't help but find it absurd wherever they were going to. He didn't expect anything from them anyway, until his sight flickered once more, reminiscent of the dream he experienced the previous night. He started to notice that same being staring at him through the door's lock, his eyes widening in disdain, yet horrified by the sight, before he lost his consciousness. A week later he woke up, as the beeping noises were disturbing him from getting any sleep, surveying the room, his gaze falling upon the stark linen white blue sky walls, accompanied by that unsettling odor reminiscent of a blend of disinfectants, medications, and various scents that typically linger in hospital environments. Beep, beep. More deliberate, purposeful beeps kept going on and on. The sound stays the same, but the calm and serene pauses in between are noticeable with a steady rhythm. He then noticed a white drawer beside his bed, filled with needles, medications, and vaccinations. As he sat up, he noticed his hands were stuck with shackles that were attached to the bed. He kept hearing the same whispers that echoed through his mind, telling him to kill them. The noises continued by, until he overheard his parents and the physician discussing something intensely regarding the mental health issues while his father suddenly barged in. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The kid has completely lost it and is now passing out," he argued with an open hand. He pointed at his son, who was perched on the hospital bed, as he glared at the physician with a stern look on his face. The physician looked over at their son, holding a clipboard against his chest. He could only observe him twitching due to anxiety. Elias observed that his gaze was directed towards him. The physician sat down next to his bed, placing down the clipboard on the drawer. "Nice to meet you, Elias. I'm Dr. Smith. Your parents mentioned you've been experiencing some challenges within your mind?" Elias slowly glanced up at his father, obviously knowing his father would be the one who would blurt out things like that. He then slowly blinked towards the window, seeing the autumn leaves falling off the trees. The view was somewhat peaceful as the leaves were rustling against the soft wind that was brushing against the skin. He then let out a soft, ragged sigh. "How long have I been here?" he asked quietly. The physician looked up at him before responding to him in a calm tone. "A week, to say the least. You were in a coma." Elias nodded. The physician pressed on with his questions about his health while he kept responding, but he couldn't shake off the annoying nagging voices in the background, just like earlier, before they stormed into the room. Before he could answer the questions, he got that same ragged feeling in his chest, the one that was met back at home when he first saw the cracks in the walls. But now he begins to glimpse ephemeral shadows trailing behind the rest of the people in the room, progressing at a sluggish pace with its haunting smile, teasing him urgently to act the way it wanted him to. He shook his head, quickly blaming the medications the physician put him onto. After a while, the physician finally freed him from the chains he was bound to. "You're all free to leave now. Call us if there's any more symptoms going on, and we'll send out security guards to get him back, just in case," he said. The mother nodded. "Thanks, doctor. Will do." The husband sneered as he rolled his eyes. "Well, this was a waste of my time. Come on, Maggie, let's get out of this place." As the parents walked out of the room, Elias followed after them. Like a little shadow that he was, grabbing his stuff with him and patrolling through the hospital with them to the outside, and to the car that was standing in the parking lot in the middle. Once he got inside the car in the back seat, his mother sat on the driver's seat while the husband remained next to her, with his arms crossed tightly yet impatiently in front of his chest, while being grumpy about the whole doctor appointment idea. The long road continued serenely, with the radio playing its melody and cheerful songs about Christmas Eve accompanying the music. Soon they noticed the choir singing under the Christmas lights, holding their folders in their hands, dressed up with the gowns that were colors of deep wine hues, dresses in contemporary formal casual look of all black and white combination. The mother stopped the car nearby at the parking lot, wanting to see and hear more about the beautiful melody that's floating by from the choir. The father didn't mind it, though. He could feel the atmosphere of Christmas that's bountifully spread around the world, the spirits in its wake. But the thought of their son's behavior a week ago was absurd to him, and now he has to deal with this nonsense too. He glanced over at his wife, elbowing her slightly. "What are you doing? We can't just stay here, we need to get home," he urged. His wife rolled her eyes at him and responded cozily. "Aw, come on, this literally happens once a year. We gotta enjoy it. It doesn't hurt to give it a shot and listen." Her husband glanced over at her with a frown. "Yeah, but what about the home? We're supposed to get there before it's getting late." The wife rolled her eyes again. "Jesus Christ, Fred. Fine, we can go home." She started the car again and drove away from the parking lot before turning on the radio again as she drove back to the road again. Once they finally got back home, the father was able to grab the car door handle and open it, getting ready to step out. His son and his wife did the same thing after him and followed him inside the house. After entering the house, they all split up and headed to separate rooms. The father collapsed onto the couch, switched on the TV, and crossed his legs up on the coffee table near the couch as he opened the can of beer and took a sip from it. Click, click, click. Nothing interesting seemed to appear on the screen, so he just stuck up with the news. Urgent music plays as the news anchor, a serious-looking man with a serious tone, appears on the screen. Breaking news. A week ago, police discovered a crime inside the old warehouse. 2 males around in their 20s are brutally murdered near Galloway City around 2:30 p.m. last Tuesday. Father raised an eyebrow at the news. Finally, something was happening. In continuation, their bodies were hung upside down from organs like Kite's gut and soft palate. The identities are not known, but an unusual dagger was found, smeared with blood. The location was discovered last Tuesday, with symbols and rituals carved on the victims' bodies. They also found obsidian blades, black and red candles, and other rituals. The screen flickers where the dagger was found at, on the floor next to it. Lifeless bodies are zipped inside the bags. Breaking news. The cops said the dagger may be coated with poison on it. Places they must investigate it. The screen flickered into a policeman around 60. The cop. We are currently surveying current crimes that have led us to this point of view. They didn't yet know what was going on, but he was sure they'd find out soon. Our men are currently investigating the candles and writings that can be found in the walls. The writing style was that of ancient or maybe Celtic writing. This was stated by the cop while he was speaking to reporters from various television stations, with microphones pointing to his face. The father's smirk faltered a bit. Huh, he muttered in shock. The screen flickered to the scene where toxicologists are currently collecting the dagger, in a small paper bag carefully with the forceps. The cops observed the bags where the corpses were stuffed in, flashing the light from the flashlight on each one of the bags, from upside down in slow motion. It seemed like their bodies were cut open and some were hanged with hooks, coming through the back of their mouths. As the father turned off the television, he would currently reflect deeply on the circumstances. He then gazed at the screen once more before slowly smirking, as if got an idea which was unpleasing. He started to project out whatever he was planning to do while his son was still remaining inside his room. He stood up and took a slow walk towards his son's room. Back at Elias's room, Elias sat there around his computer again. His eyes scanned the lines of text, devouring every word about the mysterious entity known as Bodach. He He was kind of mesmerized by the whole thing. He couldn't help but take notes about the creature's appearances, and such as like an old friend coming out of darkness when he needed him. The air was thick with an eerie silence, as if the shadows themselves were watching him, lurking through those cracks that were keeping open behind his father earlier. That same eyeball from that crack from the wall a week ago still loomed there, waiting. 20 minutes later, before he could even finish the story, his father grabbed his arm, his eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. "Elias, I told you not to read about that," he growled, his voice low. His grip was like a vice, and dragged him away from the computer. "But Dad, I only just got into the best fucking part," Elias whined, but his father didn't like the way his son kept defying him. "I already said no. Don't you know any better than to ignore my warnings? We've already lost one daughter because you failed to protect her from drowning, and now you're here reading about this pathetic creature known as Bodach? Your sister would have never wanted this, Elias. Know your damn place, or I'll drag you there." As the father fixed a menacing stare on Elias's grip on reality was tenuous at best, as he saw wall cracks again that seemed to shift and writhe, like living serpents. Suddenly a figure began to seep through the fissure. Bodach, that piece of shit who was messing up with his mind the whole time, was now standing next to his father, with that unsettling grin on his face. He would savor the sight at the creature's cranky looks that were haunting his mind. He stood there frozen, as his father tried to make sense out to him, looming his gaze all over the creature's body, not leaving any details out of it. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine, holding in his ragged breath as Bodach's smile grew wider and colder, licking his teeth as they seemed to sharpen into points as he watched the young man twisting his head hunched sideways with a loud crack, with his arms swaying long against the ground. Bodach began to move closer, his movements slow and deliberate, yet dark and jerky, like a puppet on a string, his claws clicking on the wooden floor as he approached his father, slowly reaching out his neck smoothly, with his broken nails stroking against the throat, as he grinned wildly behind him with his hollow sunken eyes, and the darkness seemed to have grown even thicker, as if it had been waiting there for him all along. Bodach smirked as he glanced up at Elias's slightly horrified, but yet mesmerized look on his face, saying in a croaked tone, "I know you want to, my boy. I know you do," he murmured, running his nails alongside the father's throat. The good news is the father doesn't feel his antics, since the time is frozen still, as long as that fucking creature is there in front of him in a flesh. "I'm waiting, Elias," he hissed in a seductive dark tone that croaks from his throat, in an inhumane way as possible, as if trying to get into his head. Elias shook his head negatively. No, he can't do that. To kill his father? Yeah, he can be such an asshole at times, but that doesn't give him the right to... that! Right? Right? Lost to his own thoughts, Bodach would encroach, and slowly reach out by the hands of the boy, welling up him further, more towards its purpose, and twisted eyes leaving the father, as time stood frozen in the void of eternity. Still, he could hear his father jerking himself away behind him from the situation, as if a puppet on the strings, along with Bodach spitting those last haunted, though delicious and malign cheered words to animate him further. But then, a loud, irritated noise from his father would blurt out as he snapped back to reality, when he felt his father yanking his arm roughly, insisting that he had to go with him without leaving any room for arguments. Then, all of a sudden, his father pulled him along with him. Despite the protests he would let out, his father kept towing towards the door and yanking him all the way outside himself. As they both went outside, locking up the door behind them, the mother would be deeply asleep in their bedroom after the long drive home, clearly exhausted from it all. She didn't even realize what her husband is doing with her son. Half an hour later of walking around in the woods by twisted, gnarled trees that were bowing down to the ground in the midnight mist, they approached the old temple, covered by ruined, bloodied walls, where the ancient whispers would caught up to him, are now reaching out to him like a sacred lullaby that keeps humming that same old tune before the disaster coming over. He couldn't understand why they were here, or what the purpose was. But before he even noticed, his father dragged him and yanked him toward the old black mirror, and muttering something in long-forgotten language, as if he was possessed. As Elias heard something strange moving towards them both from the shadows, he immediately turned his head around, and noticed their hollowed, crooked, smiley faces. Not just one, but a whole group gathering around him in the circle, chanting, just like in his dreams he has been recently having. As soon as he noticed their looks, a wave of panic washed all over him at the sight of their approach. He struggled and struggled to pull himself away from the sink that he was compelled to confront by his dad in front of the black mirror. But there was no use. He was already forced to face that damn mirror, hauntingly, with his father pulling out his eyelids down painlessly. He couldn't help but shiver and whimper, and to hope that this was a fucking nightmare again. But no, it was something worse. Reality, which he could not escape. After a while, his eyes would end up scorching from the dryness, and that's when the group leader would grab it, the golden bronze bowl filled with tar black ink. And at first it would be the leader standing beside him and his father, slowly pouring the ink in his eyes as it seeped into the caruncle and lens, nice and slow, while his father would tip his head down backwards by the boy's chin, ignoring the screams and desperate begging that Elias would be spewing from his mouth. As the ink trickles into Elias's eyes, he begins to experience strange and unsettling things. His vision blurs, and he feels a bright pain, as his eyes are burned from the inside. The ink appears to penetrate his eyeballs so deeply that it causes his pupils to dilate and contract ominously until he is perfectly blind with it. He would, after the ritual was finished, hauntingly look around at the area in his black eyes, which were shining, dark and white dots. Contemplating the surroundings and his new appearance, it was at least quiet. The cults were gone. His dad was gone. It was only darkness surrounding him like an old friend who stood behind him. It was peaceful. But he couldn't get out. He was trapped. The only light shining out is from the cracks from the mirror. He was puzzled at first, but he figured he could even like it here even more than at home. At home, later, the father unlocked the door as if nothing had occurred in the woods. He walked into the bathroom, undressed and showered with hot water. Unbeknownst to him, hauntingly, he saw his son staring back at him inside the mirror with those hollow eyes, open-mouthed and gaping look on him. His skin was radiating a pale light purplish tint, and his hair flowed in midnight black, illuminating the entire ambiance with his ghostly appearance, flickering in light like a broken glitchy TV. He would simply stare at him, doing nothing. His father came from the shower after 10 minutes, put on some clothing, and chose to brush his teeth as the lights danced with flickering shadows. As he returned his gaze to the mirror, he noticed his son's reflection staring back at him, his mouth wide open in a sad, astonished pout, ink streaming from his eyes and lips down to his chin and neck. The ink kept dripping down his chin onto the floor. Before he could respond, his kid grabbed his collar and pulled him in, leaving hollow moans ringing in the bathroom as the lights flickered wildly. Later that night, around 2:30 a.m., his mother awoke to voices and echoes in her head, realizing her husband was no longer in bed. She sat and stood up, put on her bathrobe, and went downstairs, sleepily yet curious, to check on him. While she walked softly and carefully across the dark hallway to the main room, the lights turned off, she tried to examine the situation while the floor groaned slightly under her weight. She couldn't help but examine the area in utter silence before someone's pale hand gripped her shoulder from behind her, causing her to gasp and spin around, terrified. Her eyes widened at the image in front of her. What she saw was ridiculous and horrifying. Her spouse stood there with his mouth wide open, the meat hook in his left cheek, and his eyes hanging sideways. His neck cracked, and his body hung from the ceiling, ominously staring at her. His eyes were solid white orbs with no iris, pupil, or humanity. The mother let out a horrifying scream at the sight of her husband in such a manner, a fully limp and numb corpse just hanging there. A warm, chilly breath brushed over her skin from behind her again, and she swung around to see her kid looking softly at her, his dark lips curling into a soft, loving smile, as if greeting her quietly. His eyes lose their warmth, instead blazing with a faint white that appears to pierce the darkness in its sockets. He would slowly rise from the dark corner, before lunging at her with a sudden speed from the kitchen into the main room, pinning her to the couch in front of the window, causing her heart to skip a beat and to slump and flinch at the sudden action. He gripped his mother's neck as she would gasp and whimper when he pointed the cold blade over at her neck. Now, mother, don't whine," he smirked as he hushed her. His mother couldn't help but sniffle and silently beg him to save her life. But no, he wouldn't. Instead, he'd just grab her by the collar, lifting her off the couch a bit, where her feet and knees could still be touching it, bringing her up to his level with force examining in eerie delight the sight of her fear, enjoying it even. He tossed her back onto the couch, backing up slightly and holding the dagger thoughtfully against his chin as he looked up at the ceiling. What should I use on you? He looked around the room for anything nice to use. Maybe blades or knives? No. Too easy and too unoriginal. Perhaps. His gaze then landed on the book, and then his gaze also landed on something else slowly, before his lips curled up in a faint smile. Ah! He sighed in a satisfied tone as he grabbed the hammer and nails in his hands, slowly picking them up from his father's murky, splattered workshop table. Yet tauntingly, in a humming sing-along tone, he moaned slightly. Perfect. The mother sat there on the couch, on her knees, as her breath hitched anxiously in short, timid, shaky breaths, head hanging down before she heard footsteps going to the workshop, stopping by at the table as she cautiously looked up at him. Elias would stare at the hammer, caressing it gently and slowly with his fingertips, as he recalled the time when his father swung the hammer against his head, to cause him to twitch at the sight before flinching, while his mother only watched this to happen, never able to stop at his doings, as there was splattering ringing in his ears, with that sickening crack coming out of his nose, before it all went black. As he snapped out of it, his grip tightened at the club hammer, the one he was holding in his both hands. Letting out a sigh of relief, he spun around to face his mother. I wonder how this works on you. What do you think, Mother? He narrowed his eyes at her, fearful look on her face, as he was slowly moving towards her. His steps were filled with soft, creaking shuffles against the floor, when before she even knew, he would be already suddenly lunging and swinging the hammer at her head, with her knees buckled, as she crumpled backwards, striking the boards hard enough to send a shudder through the room. He crouched down to her level, holding his father's hammer in his hand, as he spoke in a fake, pitiful tone. You know, I'm kind of disappointed in you, Mother. Quite disappointed, he murmured dismally, as he tilted his head back and forth in each side as his mother was gasping in pain as she was trying to get up. He sighed and grabbed her by a handful of hair in his grasp and yanked her to face him. You let Dad kill me. Why? He snarled. The question was rhetorical. Of course he knows why, but he wanted to see if his mother does know the reason. You just sat there and watched. Let him strike. Well, I was fucking 5 years old. You never cared enough to protect me, did you? His mother stared at him, terrified of her son's appearance, tears falling down her bloodied cheeks, as she started to weep, letting out a choked, pitiful noise out of her throat, as she cried, My son! My son! She repeated, choking into her own voice as she reached out to him, her hands trembling furiously when he was basically just apathetically watching her, before pushing her hand away from him gently. Oh no, 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 Mother. Not your son anymore. He's gone. He then chuckles lightly, filled with sadness and betrayal in him. And as for Elaine, she drowned, right in front of us, and you and Dad never did anything about it, yet he always dared to blame me for it. He then sighed, bitterly looking up at his hammer, tightly gripping onto it as he gritted his teeth. And because of that, you're gonna drown. His mother's eyes widened in fear, as he then decidedly to suddenly grab her by the fistful of hair and brought her in the bathroom and pushed her roughly down into the water, drowning her. His hatred towards her was high, so he kept pushing and pulling her in and out of the water, leaving splashes across the room till she chokes into the water, and finally dies. When he was finished here, he would notice the lights flickering again, slowly, every once in a while. He dropped her corpse as he strolled softly yet quietly towards the mirror. He glared through it, where he could see and hear faintly how a child was giggling, where he could see and hear faintly how a child was giggling there, with her distorted cold voice, glitching and echoing in his head, after she was gone almost immediately, as he turned away from it. Once she vanished, he immediately felt a cold, bony, slender hand grasping his shoulder from behind him, and when he turned around, he saw him, and then he was gone. After dragging his body back in the mirror, Bodach would remain there, boneless, waiting for the next victim coming along, before it burst out the house in fire, leaving the mirror untouched, and left the house, as the flames slowly surrounded him, inch by inch. Hey guys, it's Mayday, and thank you so much for watching this video. I really liked reading it, and it is the longest video that I have narrated. This is because most of the stories I read are either one chapter long, so I just read a chapter and post it. But this one is just one story, boom, all right there. So I really had fun reading it. I love reading about new creepypastas. I think people should narrate more newer creepypastas, so that's what I'm doing. And if you have a story that you want to get read of a creepypasta character or anything like that, please comment down in the comment section down below. That'll be all from me. Thank you and goodbye.